What's good, everybody out there on YouTube? This is your man Shattuck Stick dropping some hot frogga on this mic. Today we're talking about Sonic Prime, what I thought about the show, what you guys thought about the show, and I just wanted to talk over some talking points that the community has had over the past week or so since the second season has dropped. But before we start, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and the like button. If you do all those things, it really helps me fight the algorithm. And then if you want to help me further, you can even drop a super thanks in the comments down below. But hey, subscribing, liking, and hitting the notification bell are free, so I suggest those. But with that out of the way, let's talk about my opinions on the show first of all. I think Sonic Prime is really good, and I do think that the writers really understand Sonic. Now, I would say prior to this, Sonic Boom was the best Sonic cartoon. It had the best writing, and while it didn't have, I guess, the best animation in a sense, they never treaded so far that it became an issue. You could tell it was relatively low budget, but at the same time, the writing carried it so hard that it didn't really matter. And I think that's what was so unique about Sonic Boom. It was really just about how witty the jokes were, how good the jokes were, and how much fun you had watching the show and listening to these characters banter. Where I think Sonic Prime is really about the action and how they get to the action. I think Sonic Prime does a better job of giving these characters a sense of urgency that we haven't seen in previous Sonic shows or cartoons before. It has a really simple premise and setup, and I really like that about the show. Sonic and gang are trying to stop Dr. Eggman from getting this new prism. Sonic breaks the prism because he doesn't listen to his friends, especially when it's needed the most. And I think while it's not the most unique concept, I think it's a good concept for the show, because we actually get to see Sonic grow as a character. One of the things that I guess, as an observer of the Sonic franchise over the years, haven't really ever seen is Sonic growing as a character. As much as people like to talk about the characterization of Sonic and who he is, I feel like we really lost the ability for Sonic to grow. Now, I will say this, he is somewhat of a flat character in a sense, but I think that they're trying to change that about Sonic, and I think that's a good thing. On top of that, I like things like the character designs and some of the newer characters. I think the weakest characters in here are the Chaos Council, which is the series of Eggmen, you know what I mean. While I do think they're kind of nice in concept, and they work well when they're all together or when multiples of them are together, I don't think any one of them really works strongly on their own except for Mr. Dr. Eggman, which I think is actually deliberate, because the only ones I find funny, at least on their own, are Dr. Deep and Dr. Dunnit. I do think it's cool that they have the whole Eggman through the ages type of thing, but at the same time, I feel like because of that, they have sort of, I guess, one or two dimensional personalities. There's not a lot to them. Mr. Dr. Eggman is, I guess, Eggman in his prime, or at least as a villain. Dr. Babble is Eggman as a baby. Dr. Don't is Eggman as an adolescent. Dr. Deep is Eggman in his late 20s, early 30s. And then Dr. Dunnit is Eggman as a geriatric. While I do like them as a concept and I like them all together and the way they interact together, I just don't think they really work on their own. That's it. But then we get the other versions of characters. I think the most prominent one in this show, 9, is actually, I think, a cool take on Tails. The whole premise of his existence is really that he didn't have a Sonic or, someone to really lead him down the road that he would have taken had Sonic been there. And I think that's pretty dope. And you see the ramifications of that at the end of season 2. His thought process isn't really as pure as someone like a Sonic. In a sense, it's more logical, but in another sense, it's more morally ambiguous. And again, I like that. On top of that, we get to see, Shadow in all of his greatness. We get to see a ton of fighting, which I will have to say, this is the best choreography in any Sonic show, period. To be honest, the choreography here, especially in the fight scenes, is a lot better than a lot of action cartoons and a lot of anime. And I don't think people talk about that really enough. I gotta give Wild Brain credit. They were cooking. And in all honesty, that was the thing that I worried about the most. Now, in season 1, it's not as strong. The action is nowhere as strong as it is in season 2. In season 2, they're just fist fighting. I mean, you start right out the gate with, Sonic versus Shadow, and I love it. It's a great fight. But these action sequences are sort of double-edged swords. And what do I mean by that? I mean that sometimes they actually drag on too long. I'm not talking about the super hype, oh, these guys are fighting type of stuff. Sometimes it's just Sonic running. And oh, Sonic has to dodge some obstacles that we placed here conveniently, that he's gotten through in the past, but he's not going to get through in any way that's cooler or different than anything he's done before. I don't know. I just feel like those segments are there as filler. And that's one thing I think I didn't really like about season 2 especially. Season 1, I could forgive it, but season 2, it felt like there was a lot of filler in the episodes. It felt like they were trying to drag out the episodes as long as possible. Because when stuff was happening, it was really good, but when stuff wasn't, I just started to get bored, and that's the issue. Otherwise, I think this show is really well done. I think the animation is great. I think the writing is great. And while sometimes some of the scenes stretch out a bit longer than I would like, I think it's overall the best Sonic show we've ever gotten. And I think a lot of you guys think it's top notch too. I asked, how would you rate Sonic Prime? And a ton of you chose A. 55% chose A and 30% chose B. That's 85% of the people who, voted on this. And then on top of that, when you look even further, 11% of y'all chose C. So only 4% of y'all really just did not vibe with this show. And we can bump that up to 15% at worst. And I think that's good for Sonic. Now, I do want to talk about some of the talking points people have talked about online. Most specifically, the characterization of Sonic, and I guess the writing being too kiddie, which I'm going to tackle the latter first. It's a kid's show. I don't know what you expected. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Sonic can't delve into deeper themes. I think Sonic Frontiers is probably the most mature outside of really Shadow the Hedgehog with the guns and the swearing and shit. But on the real, Sonic Frontiers probably is one of the only, Sonic games that has sat down and asked people questions about their existence. It is the most existential Sonic game. I was drunk one day listening to I'm With You, and then I started thinking about the monologue that the end gives to Sonic, and it's just about entropy. It's about your inevitable death. But at the end of the day, Sonic is a franchise that's supposed to be relatively family friendly at least. And when you have a show like Sonic Prime that's very obviously geared toward the younger end of the fan base, it's very obvious that some people can't really catch on to that. And I don't think there's anything really wrong with not liking the show, I guess because of that. But I think to slam the show for it is a bit much. You cannot like the show for that, but I feel like to criticize the show when it's very obviously geared towards that younger crowd is kind of stupid. Especially when we hit our second issue, which is the characterization of Sonic. Now, I will say, he sometimes gets a bit grating in the show. I'm not going to lie, but I feel like people talk about it like it's the end of the Sonic franchise sometimes. Sonic's a bit on the kiddier side because they're trying to create a character that their target demographic can relate to. And because of that, Sonic is the way he is. They want kids to see that you can make mistakes and you should try to rectify them, and maybe you shouldn't rectify those mistakes in this way. That's kind of a common trope in especially kids' action cartoons. I'm just surprised that people are this upset about it, deeming the whole show bad because they don't like a few things about it, when in reality those things aren't that significant, especially because a lot of the other characters get a lot of screen time and they get a lot of talking time. I just think the worst part about Sonic himself is that he doesn't really shut up. They even joke about this in the show. This show's version of Metal Sonic, which is called Chaos Sonic, made by the Chaos Council. I hate his design, but he does some raw stuff. Don't get me wrong, he does some absolutely raw shit, and he beats Sonic's ass. But he's essentially that version of Sonic, or that trope of Sonic amped up to 1,000,000. So he never shuts up, and other characters will joke about it in the show. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing when they can play off of it well. Yeah, Sonic doesn't stop talking, but when he does, it's important. He's getting his ass kicked. Someone's in trouble, in some real deal danger. And I really like that. But I don't know. I don't think Sonic Prime is as bad as some of the people on Twitter would lead you to believe. But I do think it is definitely one of the best Sonic shows we've gotten, period. If not the best. But I don't know. Let me know how you feel in that comment section down below. I really liked Sonic Prime, maybe you didn't. I mean, this poll I did says a lot of people are liking it, so I can't be the only one who feels, I guess, this way about it. Again, I don't know. Tell me in that comment section down below. But this has been your man Hastags. Don't forget to follow your boy on Twitter at MobShatic100 and do all the things like commenting, and subscribing. Links are always down in the description below. But remember, Hot Faraga turns the cold Blizzaga. Chill out some of my other videos. Peace and have a good one.